Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anaina,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we've watched recently.
And today we're doing Until Dawn.
Every time we die, the night restarts. And something different is trying to kill us.
Okay, so this is based on the game of the same name that came out in 2015 by Supermassive Games, right? It is loosely based in the sense there is a reoccurring character and some reoccurring places, but mostly is its entirely own thing.
Okay.
And I'll come to at the end, which is why would you do this and why not just do something else? But it's a very standard horror film premise. These five early adults trying to find one person's sister, Clover's sister, played by Ella Rubin. You have Max, played by Michael Camino, Nina, played by Odessa Zion, Megan, played by Ji Young Yu, and A, played by Belmont Campbell. They're trying to find the sister, wander into this really creepy house, and then night falls, weird things start happening. It's like as basic and simple of a horror premise as you can get.
Sounds like almost every other horror film, sure.
Yeah, sounds like every horror film of like starring a group, right? And pretty soon, like I think within like 25 minutes into the film, all of these five characters die.
Okay.
And that's where the conceit of the film comes in, which is it's a time loop story. And every time they die, the night resets and they have to make it until dawn. There's this huge hourglass in the center of the house. And every time it becomes worse as well. So it's not just that you have to survive. Now you have to survive it even harder, right?
Sure.
And yeah, and as this goes on, they learn more about the town they're in, the lore about everything, why this is happening, and other people who it has happened to, right?
Yeah.
And listen, here I'll admit, I absolutely love a time loop. So it is a gimmick that I love so dearly, and I have no real reason to explain why so.
Okay.
It is just this and single take anything that I will just watch endlessly. Just give me a time loop story and I will sit through it.
Fair.
So it is a time loop story, and I think there are interesting bits to this, right? As the time loops go on, the lore tries to expand of this town, what happened to it, why is it haunted? There's a huge supernatural element to this, right? Why this is haunted and who is basically causing a lot of this, right? And also the characters slowly, after each time they die, start morphing into these monsters themselves. And the film comes together when you learn the central of why this is happening and as the characters try to escape. I won't spoil it as if all of them do, one of them does, whatever happens, right? But here I want to compare it to the game, which I haven't played, but I know I've watched a lot of playthroughs and kind of know what the game is about. It's very different from the game. The game is a much more different horror film because the game is also a very much choose your own adventure kind of story where you choose where the
Goosebumps, like the Goosebumps books.
Or like for film, Bandersnatch, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it is very much like that. And so I want to talk about the nature of adapting something like that, or just in general video games into films like these, right? Now we've had this so much that you have multiple types of adaptation. You have your Minecraft, which is, it doesn't really have a story, so we're just going to make one for it. You have something like The Last of Us, which is we're pretty much just going to follow the games. You have something like Fallout, which is we're going to work within this larger sandbox universe and make our new story through it. And then you have stuff like this, which is Until Dawn. We're going to use the IP, which is, I think, honestly, the worst and most boring use of it. We're going to use the IP name, but we're going to use it completely entirely differently and not really do anything with the original thing.
Right.
The only realistic things that stick by are Peter Stormare, who plays Dr. Hill, who played Dr. Hill in the games and also within this film. And just the minds and certain settings that come back, right? And throughout watching this, I was like, it's not bad necessarily. It's a very much a horror film you can throw on the TV with friends but it is not something you realistically remember. It is not something unique. It is not something that leaves any impact with you. Even when you're watching it, you're like, yeah, it's about Clover's trauma. That's obvious. And then the film kind of like is never subtle about it and make sure you understand that it is about Clover's trauma about her sister getting lost. And that is my conceit with this film. There's a point where one of the characters in that death zone just fully combusts, just spontaneously combusts. I don't think you were supposed to laugh at that scene, but I did very much laugh at that scene out loud.
I mean, I'm not so much a fan of horror or gore, which means if that makes me laugh, that means it's not horror or gore done correct.
Yeah, it's funny, and at that moment something clicked in my head. And this is not a review of this film necessarily. It is much more a conversation of like, why did this not? I wish this happened, and I have a better idea, kind of thing. Where again, easier said than executed. It is impossible to make a film. I don't know how any film gets made, right? But in that sense, this would have worked so well as a parody satire of horror films, of these slasher types of films. Because when the film starts off, these characters are obnoxious or so annoying. They'll say things where it's like, why would you say that to anyone? Like, why? You're an asshole. You're not a good friend at all. And you can see like these characters are so stereotyped in some way that you're like, they have to be ridiculed.
Yeah.
They're not in-depth characters.
I think you can make an argument both ways because I 100% see what you mean. On the other hand, though, people who play the game and are like fans of the game are going to be like, if there was a parody, are going to be like, yeah, but that's not, excuse me. And there's always an argument to be made for making like a better film as is, for making just a better horror film. But I do see what you mean. It's like, if you have the chance to be creative, like you were saying for the Minecraft movies, like we have chance to be creative and expressive or something. And if you're already not going to stick to so much of the source material, then just like go crazy with it.
Yeah, make something. If you already were not going to stick to the source material, why would you not just try and do something more unique to it? And again, like you mentioned, I think it comes from this idea of we have a pre-established audience for this film and they probably wouldn't want that. But you're already not giving them what they wanted either.
Exactly,
it's very different from the games as anyways. So why not make this? Because the time loop, I think, adds such an interesting idea of this is stupid, or like just how quickly horror transcends into comedy once you realize tropes. Once you like, it could be such a good unique way of like, as the characters go through each loop, they realize the tropes of horror films and kind of pick them out and ridicule them as they go along.
Yeah.
And it becomes funnier. And the thing is that another time loop horror film, which I really like, is Happy Dead Day, which kind of does it, which is has its cake as well, which is like, we can make fun of horror sometimes. It will not stop things being scary, but it acknowledges this fine line between what there is.
I mean, I honestly, as a non-horror consumer, if people made horror funnier, I would become a consumer.
Yeah. And I think that's it. That's like my biggest takeaway of this film was like, it just feels like an adaptation done solely for the sake of like adapting an IP to make money. And there's just nothing, there's no real creative vision coming from it of like this. You can translate this into something really cool. There's no real story that they want to tell that feels original in any meaningful way. It's honestly so generic that they made the Asian character the one who communes with spirits. And I'm like, yeah, could you realistically have gone into more stereotypes and more generic film?
Oh God. All right. I'm convinced this needed to be a parody.
Yeah, so like honestly, if I tell you that, then you're like, it's funnier if it was a parody, right? But it's not. And that's it. So yeah, that's my thing of Until Dawn. I was like, reviewing the film, it's very much, I wouldn't necessarily ask you to go to the cinema and watch it. Just go watch Sinners again. But honestly, if you want to throw this on with friends on a night out, it'll pass your time perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah, fair enough. So those are our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us with musical assets from Pixabay. See you again next time.
Bye bye.